Hello ji ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ji ਆਇਆਂ ਨੂੰ and good evening from Toronto or Brampton. Hope everybody's doing well, whatever your time zone is. I think we're going to have some friends joining us in the room now. We're going to be talking about getting ready for school. In many parts of the world right now, it is time to get ready for school again, and so we're going to be talking a little bit about that. So our guest today is Rosey Kaur, so we're just going to wait for her to join the room. There we go. So I see that Rosey G is here, and we'll also just give it a couple of minutes for anybody else that's going to be joining us as well. And it will be recorded and put onto our Instagram page as well, if anybody would like to join in then as well. But tonight we're going to be talking about school readiness, particularly for kids that are getting ready to go to preschool or daycare or to kindergarten for the first time. So we'll be talking about that. In the meantime, if anybody's watching and you have not yet received your COVID vaccine, if you have questions about it, feel free to write to us. But our numbers right now are showing us that this Delta variant, which is circulating right now, is increased in terms of how contagious it is and more dangerous as well for everyone, including our elderly and for our kids as well. So ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ COVID ਦੀ ਵੈਕਸੀਨ ਬਾਰੇ ਕੋਈ questions ਜਾਂ ਸਵਾਲ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਮੈਸੇਜ ਪਾਓ. It'll be really important for us to get vaccinated to be able to protect each other as well. So I see that Rosey's here. I'm just going to see if I can invite Rosey to join. There we go. There we go. Hello. Hi, Rosey. How are you?
Good. Is my video okay, or do I need to?
It's perfect, I think. I can see you clearly.
Perfect.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us again, and for all of your videos this week as well that we've been posting around school readiness. Hopefully you've had fun in making them too.
Oh, it was wonderful. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of that. Give me 1 second. Let me just open the door.
Absolutely, sure. So like I was saying to everybody who's here, we're going to talk about school readiness, what that means in terms of getting our kids ready to be able to go to school and to be able to succeed as well. This is the beginning of a series of back to school expert webinars through IG Live that we're going to be doing. There are more coming later this month and next month as well. And we thought it made sense to start, at the beginning of that school journey in talking about the early years. And so that's why, Rosey G, we wanted to have you back again. I was really appreciated when you were here last time and we talked about, the early years, and they're so important. But before we get into that, if you could tell us again a little bit about yourself, your training background, and the sort of work that you do.
Sure, thank you. So I'm a registered early child educator, but specialize in the early years development. So I'm known as the early child education specialist. So I really worked I guess my passion for teaching made me want to go further in my studies, and I decided to, get into the minds of the early years, preschoolers and kindergartners. So I currently have my own homeschool, my own curriculum-based homeschool. It's with the Montessori approach. And it's basically just to guide and help the early years growth before they go into, big school, kindergarten, and just getting them ready to go and develop the early development as needed as they do go into kindergarten.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And so in terms of our discussion today, and even some of the questions we've been getting this week, मैं पंजाबी ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਹਫਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੁਣ ਸਾਨੂੰ questions ਆ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ, ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਸਾਰੇ ਸੋਚ ਰਹੇ ਕਿ ਬੱਚੇ ਹੁਣ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਕੂਲ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਜਾਂ ਡੇ ਕੇਅਰ ਜਾਂ ਨਰਸਰੀ ਸਕੂਲ ਪ੍ਰੀ ਸਕੂਲ ਤੋਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰਨ ਲੱਗੇ ਨੇ, families have worries about that as well. And so we've gotten all of these questions. So maybe I'll dive into some of those. So I think one of the questions was around, for those of us who haven't been through the system, what does it look like on the first day? So when a child is coming to your school, for example, for the first day of school, what does that look like? What can families expect? And I'm thinking both in COVID, where things may be a little bit different, but also generally as well.
The feelings are real. I think parents have anxiety dropping their children off. Children kind of wean off of the anxiety, when the parents feel that, they're not ready to send their kids to school. Maybe it's too soon to send them. The grandparents are home. Oh, bachya nu sambhal sakde ne, right? But I believe that when it comes to a point where you do require an educational foundation, for the first time, it's going to be challenging. But as parents, you have to be calm and collective. We have to make sure that our children are able to, go into the feelings just like, you would go into your first day of work, as an adult. It's nerve-wracking. And the emotions are real for children, right? So, they're gonna be afraid, they're gonna ask questions, they're gonna cry, they're gonna hold on to you and say, don't leave me, right? So prepping your child before going to school is very important. I believe that talking to your child weeks in advance, right? So ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਨਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਦਿਮਾਗਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਾਣਾ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਰਹੇ ਨਹੀਂ, right? So the biggest thing is we want to instill in the children that we're not leaving you forever. It's a process. You're going for education, you're going to meet friends, you're going to have amazing teachers out there that are going to help you and guide you. And remember that when you come back home from school, we want to hear about it. So the first thing you should do is always be positive and calm. If it means that, in the Punjabi culture, do your part before you go, do some prayers if you're, mindfully intact with that, ask for strength, and I think for parents, we have to make sure that you're also ready, you're also ready to drop your child to school. So it works both ways, parents' anxiety and children's anxiety. They've got to kind of come together and bring that bond before you actually go and drop your child off, right? So I believe both parent and child need to be ready to go together. So
absolutely. I think kids pick up on that so easily, even our littlest ones, right? ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਹਿਸੂਸ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਜੇ ਚਿੰਤਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਾਂ ਜਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਟ੍ਰੈਸ ਜਾਂ ਤਣਾਅ ਮਹਿਸੂਸ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਫਿਰ ਬੱਚੇ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਉਦਾਂ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗ ਜਾਂਦਾ, right? And then they pick up on that. And especially, I know some families describe going to a learning center either for daycare, childcare, school, whatever it might be, almost like a punishment sometimes as well, right? Like, so that should not be the case. It should be really something that's an exciting new opportunity to explore, ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਹੌਸਲਾ ਵਧਾਈ ਕਰਨੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਐਕਸਾਈਟ ਕਰਨਾ ਕਿ ਉੱਥੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਨਵੇਂ, ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ, ਦੋਸਤ ਮਿਲਣਗੇ, ਟੀਚਰ ਮਿਲਣਗੇ, ਖਿਡੌਣੇ ਹੋਣਗੇ. All of those things are really exciting for kids, and also they feed off of us in that same sort of way, including I think on that first day, right? I think it's important to, I find, even on our first day as well, in our household when we're getting ready for the first day of school, to make sure things are packed in advance as well, so there isn't that kind of running around as well. You want to make it as easy and as fun as possible.
Absolutely. And I think coming on to that point, we have to make sure that the fear of going to school is not engraved, right? I'm going to drop you to school if you don't listen, right? So we want to make sure that we say, you're going to such a beautiful foundation of amazing teachers, amazing friends, but be honest as well that it might be hard the first day. Like, we have to be honest with our children, right? Like, we want them to understand that you're going to have to eat lunch on your own. You're going to have to go to the bathroom on your own, but you need to ask for the assistance, right? So I think being real with your child is the most effective way to have your child understand that, oh, my mom actually told me that, right? Going to the bathroom on my own is not, calling my mom and saying, can you come to take me to the bathroom? So you have to prepare your child even further, maybe go through a list of things that may be different from home to school, right? So there will be challenges, but we need to be honest with our child in that direction as well. So
Absolutely. And I think that's the first couple of questions we actually had, we've already covered. So one was, what is that first day going to be like in terms of that drop off? And also, how can we ease that transition? But actually, let's say like on the first day when children are coming to you, what does that look like? So do parents drop off kids at the door? And I know it would be different in different learning settings, but what does that look like? And what do you find is the best way? So especially if ਜੇ ਬੱਚਾ ਰੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਜਾਂ upset ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ, so ਉਸ ਮੌਕੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ?
Wonderful question. So because of COVID, so COVID brought a lot of different changes in my school. Before COVID, I could hold on to my child and make sure that they're okay. But even with COVID, I have my PPE on, so I'm able to still hold them and not have them afraid of that feeling of comfort, right? So with public health guidance on how do you actually leave, you can't leave a child standing there and crying. For me, something happens to my heart that I need to go and just make sure that they know that they're with trusting hands, right? So with COVID, it was very difficult because children had that fear also of like, Miss Rosie wearing a mask, why does she have this poncho on? Why are there gloves on her hands? Why is she screening us all the time, right? So that's an extra stress, I think, for children when they do come to school for the first time, right? But as an educator, there's fun ways to make sure that your child is welcoming, your student is welcoming. So I remember with my face shield, I put pom-poms on the top of my face shield. I have different kinds like crayons and trucks. And my poncho itself, I started putting stickers all over. And I wanted to make it fun. I knew that I had children coming in for the first time coming to school. So thinking, how do I make sure that these children are going to be loved and cared for? Okay, so I had to list down, certain guidelines for me, like, because what if a child doesn't let go of me and I've got screening to do for other children? But it's how you approach that child, right? So you tell them that, if you want to call your mom, I will allow you to call your mom twice. I'll give rules, right? I don't want the children to feel that that's their only way. I want them to grow, right? Independently. So I always give my students a chance to call their parents at snack or at lunchtime. So it's interesting how they call, I'm having a great day, mom. I'm having a great day, dada, right? So ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦਿਖਾਵਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਮੰਮੀ ਡੈਡੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ, ਇਹ ਕਿ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਬੱਚਾ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਬਸ where's mama, where's dada, right? As an educator, I guess having a homeschool, I've got more of a leeway. Public school system, it may be different, but ask the teacher, can my child call once? Can I call to see how my child is doing, right? Send pictures. For me personally, WhatsApp is like this contagious thing that I have with my parents. Each child has a group. I send pictures to make sure to ease that parent's mind emotionally, right? ਕੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਪੇਰੈਂਟਸ ਕਾਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਬੱਚਾ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਉਹਨੇ ਖਾਇਆ ਕੁਝ ਉਹਨੇ ਆ ਕੀਤਾ so I'll give them a week's worth of pictures how they're doing but then I'll start weaning it off and now that child becomes he's flourishing or she's flourishing on their own, right? So we have to make sure that as an educator we're giving that love and that kindness back to the child so they would want to come into your trusting arms and foundation as well. So,
and I find, after that initial transition, pehle maybe kuch dinan baad ya hafte baad bacche ape excited hoke jande hai कि उन्होंने अपने दोस्तां ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਣਾ, activities ਹੋਣੀਆਂ, teacher ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ, so they feel excited to get back into that routine as well. So I find that it's a tough beginning, like that transition both for families and for kids too, right? But I think it's really important to talk to, like you're saying, the staff in the room of how do we make this easier in terms of that transition. But I like you were saying, I think keeping it positive. And I think in the video you had made earlier this week, so if folks have not seen the awesome videos that Ms Rosie has made for us, they're on our Instagram page. But one of the things you were talking about was reminding kids that you're going to come back and pick them up, right? So that you're there for a period of time, and then you're going to come back and pick them up. If you could speak a little bit more about that, I think that'd be helpful.
So telling a child, like, the initial drop off is so crucial as a parent to the child. You know, you don't need to talk in front of I believe in front of the teacher. I think taking the child aside and saying whatever comes to your heart, you know, be strong. Because if you start getting emotional, your child's going to be, why is mama crying? Dada, why are they crying? It's more, I believe, the mothers get really like, chhad ke asti bhi ja rahe hain. How is the child going to be, right? But I always say to my parents, I'm going to give you extra time devangi, you know, whether it's 2-3 more minutes. Just talk to your child that you're not going to be leaving them with Ms Rosey. But after 2 or 3 weeks, the child is like, Mama, you can go home. We're going to stay with Ms Rosey, right? So you're right. It's not about like that couple of days of anxiety. They kind of go into the habit and they build their friendships and they build the routine of going to school, right? So the initial shock will be there, but it won't be there at all times. But the most important thing is, yes, we do need to express that you will be back. You're not going to be staying at the school. Sometimes kids will ask me, am I sleeping over at the school, Ms Rosey, today? My mama didn't tell me anything. Right? So it's important to tell your child that you're going to be back numerous times, you know, even prepping them in the morning. Asi wapas awange, right?
And that's so important around, you know, that confidence that that child has in you, as, you know, as the caregiver, and then also within, you know, as they get to know the staff within the room as well. So reminding them that they'll be okay, that they'll have fun, that you'll be there to pick them up afterwards. And ਜਿਵੇਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਿਕ ਅਪ ਕਰਦੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਨੂੰ ਫਿਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰੋ ਐਕਸਾਈਟਮੈਂਟ ਨਾਲ ਕਿ you know ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਸੀ, ਕਿਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਖੇਡੇ ਸੀ, ਕੀ ਨਵੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਿੱਖੀਆਂ. And then kids often are really proud, right? ਉਹ ਬੜੇ ਫਿਰ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਦੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੀ ਕੀਤਾ.
But on the other side, parents will call me and say, Miss Rosey, our child doesn't even say a word. Like, we ask, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਕੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਸਕੂਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਕਿਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਖੇਡੇ ਸੀ? And they're like, then they worry. The parents' anxiety increases. Like, ਉਹ ਕਿਉਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਦੱਸ ਰਹੇ? ਉਹ ਕਿਉਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਦੇ ਕਿ ਕੀ ਕੀਤਾ, right? So that's why they call me and they ask, what did our child do, right? Don't force your child to express everything at once. Maybe they just want time to kind of indulge in that moment of, whoa, I actually went to school. Mama kyon puchi ja rahe hain? Let me be, right? Yeah. So we want to make sure that our child is comfortable in that moment of speaking. And when they're ready, they'll become the chatterbox and you'll call me and say, well, I think every day, you know, kuch na kuch kehande rehte hain, right? Ki bacche ne aaya kita si, or they'll make up stories, right? Which is kind of funny, but that's where the excitement is, right? So the parents start to feel one of the month pura ease ho janda hai ki mera bacha actually enjoy kar raha hai, right?
Yeah.
So
and I think, you know, as parents, we often want to hear about everything that happened. You want to show excitement. And I think that's important to make it a positive experience, like you were saying. But at the same time, I know, you know, if I've had a really long day at work, I often don't want to talk about it right away when I get home too, yeah. Right? So same way, many kids, including older kids, ki bhi thaki jande utthe jaake, you know, school to baad, pehle ek do din especially, so galbaat karni bhi aukhi hundi hai. So sometimes it's fun just to, you know, I sometimes use funny strategies to just say, you know, what was the silliest thing that happened at school today? Or, you know, what did other people eat in their lunch? Or one thing that's funny that always makes everybody laugh is, you know, did anybody pick their nose in class today? Something just silly, you know, to get the kids laughing and to talk about it a little bit more. Because then they just open up a little bit whenever they're ready. But like you were saying, force nahi karna chahiye, jabardasti gal je unhone ji nahi karda karno, theek hai. And just make them feel safe at home, and, you know, get ready to get back into it whenever they're ready.
Because oh gal hundi na ki bacche nu maybe the expression is not there, right? They don't know ki mama nu kis tarah dassa, dada nu kis tarah dassa, andar hegi ye gal, but give them time to express it. They'll surprise you the next day ki mama, I did this with, you know, Brad or Michael or, you know, whoever, and you'll be surprised with the, you know, the excitement that they'll bring into the homes every single day. Unne aaya kitta si mama mere naal, unne aaya kitta si, or oh kudi ne gal nahi kitti mere naal, right? Like, so you'll start to see that funness happening on their own term, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the important thing about having faith, in the system, in the professionals that you're working with. थोड़ा विश्वास रखना पैंदा, क्योंकि हौली हौली फिर बच्चे आपे फिर खुल के तुहानू दसदे ने कि उन्हां दा की उत्थे एक्सपीरियंस हो रहा.
Absolutely.
And so one other question gets in Likhasi, what does a typical day of preschool or kindergarten, and I'm thinking play-based kindergarten probably, what does that look like? So बच्चे ਜਦੋਂ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ ਜੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਜਾਣਗੇ ਤੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਦਿਨ ਦੀ ਰੂਟੀਨ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ, ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਐਕਟੀਵਿਟੀਜ਼ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੱਸ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ?
So the first day of school, teachers are prepping, okay, we have to make it fun for them. Ki yani ki right away, academic, ABCs, how much math do you know? Like, let's get your testing done. So for me as an educator, I want to make sure that they walk into a fun atmosphere, right? So I'll have my coloring pages, I'll have, I'll ask them questions, I'll sing songs, I have my guitar, and I'll ask them, what did you do in the summertime? So you're actually giving them that freedom of expression, getting to know them. It's like going to work and you need to know, like, as a doctor, they might be training you, right? That you want to know where the hospital facilities are, especially the coffee machine, right? You want to actually get involved in what's happening in my environment, right? So my first day of school, like I would give it a few weeks, is go ahead and do what you want to do on your level. It's all about the child-based learning, right? So you don't want to force the academic right away. You want to see where they are in their academics, right? And you don't want to pick and point, okay, this child doesn't know their ABCs yet. You want to make sure that you're observing independently, right? Without saying anything. So for the next time that, okay, बच्चे नू ऐ नहीं आंदा, उन्हां नू हौली हौली सिखाना है, right? So I personally feel that teachers are working really hard now कि अपने school classroom किस तरह सजाएंगे, किस तरह ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਤਿਕਾਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਬੁਲਾਵਾਂਗੇ. That's how I am. When my bagiche, that's what I call them, my little flowers come to my school. What does Ms Rosey want to do? Like, she's got to like the seed itself. Like, I have to make sure that I know where my bagiche are coming to. I need to know which one is a rose or a tulip or a sunflower. I need to know how they're growing, right? And how am I going to water them? By teaching them, right? So for me personally, these children that come into my school system, I need to nurture them so that they grow, right? And I know that my fellow teachers, if you're watching, I know how hard you're working right now to make sure that your environment and your classroom is, as perfect as can be, right? So how the day looks, I believe that teachers don't have a set schedule because we need to see, how children are reacting on their first day, right? But what if you do have a curriculum that is all set to go and all of a sudden you have 10 children that are crying? You're not going to want to force, the classroom to sit down and do things, right? So you have to switch on a different, okay, everybody, let's sing and dance. Let's make sure that our energy is going, right? So that's how I would do it. And I know that many fellow teachers would bring in that funness into the classroom.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I think we often worry as parents that the first day is going to be ਸਿੱਧੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ABC ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋ ਜਾਣੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਡੈਸਕ ਤੇ ਬੈ ਕੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨਾ ਪੈਣਾ. ਤੇ I think ਪਰਿਵਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਥੋੜਾ ਸਟ੍ਰੈਸ ਵੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਮੇਰੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਨੂੰ ਜੇ ਹੋ ਸਕੇ
ਕੁਝ
ਆਂਦਾ ਨਾ ਹੋਵੇ or whatever it might be, right? So I think that's really relieving to hear that the first little while is a bit of a warm up ਕਿ ਉੱਥੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਖੁੱਲ ਕੇ explore ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ, ਦੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਕਿ classroom ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਕਿ ਹੋਰ ਬੱਚੇ ਕੌਣ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, as well, to make those relationships.
And the group areas are also set for the children, right? To get to know your classmates, right? So there could be, a time where a child is not even speaking to any of the children, and that's okay. Mera bacha bol reha nahi class de vich, bachyan de naal socially he's not engaging. Is there something wrong with my child? No. Oh, andron observe kar reha ki, okay, who can I hang out with? Who's going to be my friend? Watch what happens in a few days. That child will start flourishing and growing, and he's going to be the one that's always going to be the leader of the pack, right? So we always have to make sure that we're giving a chance to the children. Don't scold them. Don't be negative if they didn't do anything. They're they're in preschool, it's okay.
Yeah, yeah. And in terms of those routines, so you were saying that you have some group areas. There are other areas. I know in many, even I'm thinking in the kindergarten classrooms as well. They'll have different play stations as well, like for water or sensory play, things like that as well. And I know also for younger kids, we try to structure in meal times and nap times and whatnot. Could you talk a little bit about how
Sure,
that works?
sure. So welcoming the children, a few days later, that's when stuff starts to happen and building the children. So sensory play, water play, language skills. We need to see their fine motor skills. But as part of the Day's Nursery Act, children will need to nap, right? So if they're less than 3 years old, they're required to nap for at least up to an hour. And if they're not napping, that's okay too. They can lay and rest their bodies. That's what I always tell my students, right? But then they're also afraid that if they rest their bodies, I'm going to be here all night, right? So as a teacher, we have to prep that everybody, nap time is going to happen, but Ms Rosey will wake you up. So the same thing, ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਬੱਚਾ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ ਸਕੂਲ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਨੈਪ ਟਾਈਮ ਹੋਵੇਗਾ, ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਟੀਚਰ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਉਠਾਣਗੇ, ਮੰਮਾ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਸੇਜ ਕਰਨਗੇ ਕਿ ਇੰਨੇ ਤੱਕ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੁੱਤੇ ਸੀ. So at least you're giving that child the routine that they're going to know ahead of time, right? So I would do nap time with my students in class that are 3 years less. So anybody that's 2.5 up to 3 years. 3 and above, I always give them rest your bodies, because 6-7 ਘੰਟੇ ਦਾ ਪੂਰਾ ਦਿਨ ਹੈਗਾ. You want the children to also be rested, well rested, because they're probably up 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, right? So rest, and then when they get up, then the routine starts. It starts to build. Okay, so we're going to do a lesson with Ms Rosey on community helpers. So yes, we do have set curriculum set, but we also have to see and observe how the children are reacting as well, right? So are they really into lesson learning, or are they more into doing the sensory and doing things on their own, right? And I think that as a Montessori teacher, I don't want to force my children and my students to, stick to this, now, and they're free to do whatever they need to do. But the academic part of it is always going to be there, because I'm always observing to see if they are at their level.
And how do meals work? So ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਪੂਰੇ ਦਿਨ ਲਈ ਉੱਥੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, ਸੋ ਖਾਣ ਪੀਣ ਦਾ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ, in terms of snacks, meals, things like that?
So with some daycares, I believe that they do provide lunches. I think they do provide snacks, but in my school, I always ask them and encourage them to bring healthy meals, so having 2 snacks if they're here the full day, and then bringing in their own lunches. And sometimes parents know vi hunda ki every day asi different khana sanu samajh nahi aandi ki deiye bachyan nu, right? So I know that you're having a series with a nutritionist, I believe. So watch for that, because they'll be able to give you more guidance on, eating right, the vegetables, the fruits that you need. Because mere jehde students aande ne, roti aandi hai ya quesadilla, and that's all the kids want, is either green roti or quesadilla. Or they want a muffin, they don't want to eat the vegetables. So what does Ms Rosey do? If a certain student does not eat, their broccoli, they will call me ahead of time and say, Ms Rosey, can you help us so that they eat these? So I have to make sure that I have broccoli at my home, and I'll eat in front of the students, so that ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਥੋੜਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ Ms Rosey ਖਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, okay, maybe it's safe and healthy to eat. So I'll take a bite and I'll notice and I'll say things, or I'll sing songs about the broccoli, like silly songs. And you can see that they'll look at me kind of, okay, this is strange, right? But you can see ki oh ਘਰ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਕਹਿਣਗੇ ਕਿ Ms Rosey ਨੇ song sing ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ sing ਕਰੋ mama, right? So just imagine what's happening, right? That ripple effect is happening. So if we can be fun with our fruit and our vegetables and our roti, if moms, if you're listening into this live, I'll give you a pointer. Cookie cutters. So if you make a round roti and you start cutting, use a cookie cutter and make hearts or dinosaurs, I guarantee you your child will eat at school every day.
Yeah, you know what? That's funny. I've never thought of that. I've seen it used for bread before, but yeah, it would work perfectly for roti as well.
Yeah. So before you put it on the tawa, get your cookie cutters, make hearts, put a note in. That's one of the biggest things. So I'm noticing a lot of my parents from last year, they write little notes in the lunch bags. Mama loves you. And what do I have? I will have to read that out to them. And you should see the smiles on my 3-year-olds. My mama loves me. She sent me a note, right? So they get excited about that. They get so excited about, seeing something that their mom wrote, and they'll hold it the entire day, right? So
Yeah.
if that gives them comfort, then that's the way to go. So
Yeah, you know what? That reminds me when our son was younger, we would put in notes when he was able to read, or before that, when he was younger, we would draw pictures. So we draw like a little, like a goldfish or something like that, and ask him if he was able to when he came home. It gave us something to talk about as well,
yeah.
but also just something for him to look forward to for when he opened up his lunchbox. But I think the meal part, sometimes families worry about ਜੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਆਪ ਆਪਣੇ ਹੱਥਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਖਾਂਦੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਘਰੇ, ਹੁਣ ਜਦੋਂ ਉੱਥੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਕੀ ਕਰਨਗੇ, and I think that's so important from what I'm hearing from you, ਕਿ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਦੇਖ ਕੇ ਫਿਰ ਸਿੱਖਦੇ ਆ, right? They see each other, and then they learn to eat that way, or they see the teacher.
Sorry, yeah.
You have a cameo appearance there.
We have a guest with me. She's a little puppy. She doesn't want to stay with anybody, so sorry about this.
No, absolutely. But yeah, so in terms of, I think there's so much that kids learn from there. And even I think going back to when we were talking about nap time, so I think sometimes we just have such busy houses and even though I know from a medical standpoint, a developmental standpoint, we think that kids should nap in those early years, if possible. So classroom I like that idea of, asking the child to rest their body. How do they respond to that? It's time to rest or to nap.
So that's when the emotions start. They'll say, hey, Ms Rosey, Manny, and they'll start, having their tantrum. And that's when I have to not force a child to do that. So I guess for me, with the homeschool itself, I don't want to force my child to have the worst day possible when they come to see me, right? So what's going to happen in their brain is that ਅਸੀਂ ਸਕੂਲ ਜਾਵਾਂਗੇ, Ms Rosey ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਵਾਏਗੀ. So that's where that fear becomes it's hard to explain, because parents will call me in the morning and say that they don't want to come to school because they don't want to nap.
Oh.
So we have to ensure that our students are always, rested. We don't want them up early in the morning where, they're having a really bad day at school. They're not listening. They're, not eating properly. It's because they're tired. So I would really encourage parents to start prepping their child to have their, sleep early to prepare themselves to school, right? But when a child doesn't want to sleep in my school, I say that's fine. What would you like to do instead? Would you like to sit with Ms Rosey and we can color? And then when I say that, within 2 seconds, they're like, right? So I guess that comfort of Ms Rosey being there beside them helps, right? So always ask the teachers, will you be sitting with my child? Because my child doesn't like to nap. How are we going to encourage my child to rest their bodies, right? So, and I know that my fellow teachers will always be there to help out through the entire nap structure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some of that also speaks to the excitement in the classroom as well, that, but you come in and they don't want to sleep because they just feel like there's something to do, right?
Yeah.
And they don't want to miss out on the action. There's that FOMO, that fear of missing out that we talk about with grown-ups.
And it is because it's they see all their students sleeping, and then all of a sudden, okay, if I go to sleep, what if they wake up and they're enjoying? So that's another conflict that I have, is that, Ms Rosey, you're going to put me to sleep on this cot, but then everybody else is going to be up. I know it, right? So they want to be up for that moment of wake up, right?
Yeah.
But encouraging a child to rest their bodies, even if their eyes are open, I really do encourage that.
And then the other area of questions we were going to talk about, school readiness, how do we get ready for school And of course, it's hard to do, with a couple of weeks left if we're thinking about just specifically for September. But in terms of school readiness skills, so and maybe if we talk about kindergarten, where we tend to go to a bigger class usually as well, and there we expect more independence. So je bacha hun kindergarten ja raha ja, they're graduating from your classes. What are some of those skills that we think about? In my mind, I'm thinking both academic skills, but also some of that independence and adaptive and self-care sorts of skills. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I believe it's not always about academics. Life skills are so important, especially for the early years, teaching them, what's the world going to be like after you leave, Ms Rosey, right? What's big school going to look like? So I always, with my lessons, if I know that a child is about to graduate from me, I have to make sure that they're ready to face any bullying that happens in big school. They're going to have a group of 24 students and friends that they're going to be making, and some of them are introvert. They won't know how to express themselves, right? So as a preschool teacher, I have to make sure that they are strong and ready for that. So life skills about, if somebody does pick on you, what do you do? So if I know that my child is going to be graduating about 3 or 4 months prior to them leaving me, it's all about community. It's all about what they're going to be challenged with, and giving them that utsha ki tonu koi tonu buri tarah kuch bole, right? You're wearing glasses and they might say something to you. You have 4 eyes. How are you gonna battle that? And some of them are like, Ms Rosey, I don't know what I'm gonna say. I don't know what I'm gonna say. So preparing the students for those kind of moments and challenges, it's not to make them afraid of going to big school, but it's reality, right? So we have to make sure that they are ready in all aspects of life, and it doesn't matter how old you are. I think 4, 3, 4, 5, as they get older, they're going to be learning more about different events that may happen in bigger schools. So as parents, you need to prepare them. As educators, we need to prepare them. Always give them the answers to the events that may happen, the challenges that may happen, right? We don't want to leave children muted or like they can't express something, right? So we have to make sure that we have the right words to give to the child, right? So for me, it's just the main life skills, the main what events they may face going to big school, and the beautiful moments as well, meeting amazing friends. There might be a larger number of kids in your class than there were with Ms Rosey. Don't be afraid to shine. Don't be afraid to be positive and talk to your teacher if there's something that's happening or that's not fitting right with you, right? So just making them strong leaders of tomorrow, right? So
that makes sense. So assertiveness, being able to stand up for themselves, even to be able to ask for help is what I'm hearing, right? As well, if it's talking to the teacher or whomever. I know for my patients, I often talk about, is your child ready to request things? Do you know koi cheez di lod hai ki oh apne lafzan de vich keh sakde ne ki I need to go to the washroom, or may I have can I go drink some water, whatever that might be as well. And what about being able to, I'm thinking also about, going with the routines of the class when there's more kids as well. You're hoping that your child can follow along. So if it is now circle time, story time, or everybody's putting on their coats to go outside, I know our teachers will do their best to be able to help with those routines as well. But I think that's important, I think, for parents to think about is getting your child ready to be able to follow along with the routines of that class, right?
Yeah, so independence, Montessori is all about guide the child. If the child is putting their shoe on backwards, are we going to, as an educator, are we going to be giving them positive reinforcements like, wow, you did it? Or are we going to say, you didn't put your shoe on correctly. You can do that in a different lesson, in a group lesson with everybody, but just not saying it to the child in front of everyone, right? So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if putha paya hat, duja glove, duje hath vich paya. Your child did it. Your student did it. Give them a clap. Kudos to you, and then slowly wean in that left foot, right foot. and show them the right way in a one-to-one lesson, right? So early years, I always say for toddlers, if they need help, they should be able to say, Ms. Rosey, I need your help. As they get older, ready to jump in, and they will assist the little ones, right? So you can see that dynamic of helping hands in my classroom, right? But never tell a child that galt paya tu aisa karna nahi si, right? So it's best to give them that positive affirmation of, you did a great job and I'm so proud of you, and you'll see how happy they are, even though they'll walk, but it's okay, right? So it just makes them feel good that they did something on their own.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking about what kindergartens are like. So we're thinking about those readiness skills. So some of it is those routines, some of those social skills as well. And then in terms of some of the academic or pre-academic skills, what are things that parents can work on at home in getting ready for school?
Sure. So always remember that it's not a competition. If your child is not at the level that, a lot of other students are at, it's okay. ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ABC ਸਿਖਾਓ, books ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਓ. There's so many books out there, dollar store, that'll guide you through each page of the alphabets, writing, practicing. So I know in the summertime, a lot of my students' parents have asked, like, what do we do to get them ready for kindergarten? And you can always go to the store and you can find the kindergarten curriculum books nowadays, right? So prepare them, but don't, as parents, don't be so stressed out कि बच्चे ਨੂੰ ਹਜੇ ਤੱਕ ਆਪਣਾ ਨਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਲਿਖਣ ਆਉਂਦਾ, he's 5 years old. It's okay. As he practices his letters in school, the teachers will guide and help, right? So in kindergarten, I know that, we need to make sure that our names spelled, in however way they, big letters, small letters, it's okay. Colors, numbers, but all of that will be kind of observed by the teacher, to see where your child's at and work through the year on what they're lacking, what they're not. But it's amazing to see how our educators are working with children nowadays. I believe they're not just, taking one student saying, well, you don't know what you're doing right now. You should have been able to write your name or know all the colors, right? So we want to make sure that students are feeling that, they're able to do it. We don't want them to think that they're vichare kalle baithe ne classroom de vich, everybody write the letter A in that poor child utthe baith ke ਉਹਨੂੰ ਸਮਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਆ ਰਹੀ A ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ, right? So if you want your child to go to school and ਪਹਿਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ kindergarten ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ, my only advice to parents ki ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ prepare karo ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, right? And slowly, your child's teacher will start to, give that helping hand. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we like, if kids are able to recognize their name, because in kindergarten classes and many in early years as well, and so usually it has their name there as well. So if your child's able to recognize the name written down, or even their letter as well, it helps them. So absolutely. I find those sorts of things are helpful. But, if that's hard for your child, I think I'll just say, if you find that, they're really behind in terms of school and you're not sure, I find it helpful to talk to the teachers about your concerns. And also, if you're concerned, you can also talk to your doctors as well. If you have a family doctor, nurse practitioner, or pediatrician, to talk about, are we on track, or is there something that we can be doing as well to support them in terms of those early skills?
Absolutely. I think as a teacher, help is there. We're recognizing where the child is lacking. We're there to help and guide. But as far as, going to your, the medical doctor or the pediatrician, we always do encourage, parents to go and just kind of get another assessment to see what can we do to help, right? As an educator as well. So that's a good point that you had made.
Yeah, if there's concerns, but like you were saying, a lot of it is, just getting settled into school, into that classroom, and seeing how they do in terms of their their skills and letting them spread their wings,
Absolutely. Yeah.
as well. And the other plug I'll put in also is, one of the best things that we talk about in our clinic, certainly in getting ready for school, is reading at home. And so ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨਾਲ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਤੋਂ ਹੀ ਕਿਤਾਬਾਂ ਪੜ੍ਹ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ, or even if you haven't yet, ਹੁਣ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ. It's never too late.
ਹਾਂਜੀ
And ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਵੇ, ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਵੇ, ਜੇ ਪੜ੍ਹਨਾ ਔਖਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ, ਫਿਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਡੀਓ ਬੁੱਕਸ ਵੀ ਸੁਣ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ. And some of the libraries have great library ਥਾਣੀ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਡਾਇਲ ਸਟੋਰੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਫੋਨ ਕਰਕੇ ਫਿਰ ਸਪੀਕਰ ਫੋਨ ਤੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਸਟੋਰੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸੁਣਾ ਦਿੰਦੇ, ਰਿਕਾਰਡਿੰਗਸ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ, ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਬੱਚੇ ਦੇ ਲੈਂਗੁਏਜ ਵੀ ਇੰਪਰੂਵ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ, ਨਾਲੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਅਟੈਂਸ਼ਨ ਕਿ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਦੇਰ ਬੈਠ ਕੇ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਕਹਾਣੀ ਸੁਣ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ. All of those things help in terms of being able to be ready for school, where there is a lot of that happening.
Yeah. Simple books, reading to your child every day is so important. It's interesting because children, when parents read stories every day, the child picks up on the words, right? They know the next page, what's going to be written, So I know I have a book in school, and some of my students will come and we know the next one. Sometimes I'll even skip a page, like, Ms. Rosey, you skipped that sentence, but you don't know how to read yet. But see how their mind, like, they remember the story. But again, the audio books are amazing. Their sing-alongs with books. There's so many that children are able to, pick on the vocabulary itself. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think even if ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਿਰਫ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਦੀ ਕਿਤਾਬ ਮਿਲਦੀ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਪੜ੍ਹਨੀ ਔਖੀ ਲੱਗਦੀ ਆ, ਈਵਨ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਹ ਕਿਤਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਫੋਟੋਆਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਰਫਸਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਸਟੋਰੀ ਬਣਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ, ਆਪੇ ਕਹਾਣੀ ਬਣਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ, ਤੇ ਉਹ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਲਈ ਬਹੁਤ ਬੈਨੀਫਿਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਹੁੰਦਾ, ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਿੱਖਦੇ ਆ ਨਾ. ਸੋ ਦੇयर ਸੋ ਮੈਨੀ ਵੇਜ਼ to be able to do that, ਕਿ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹ ਮਾਹੌਲ ਬਣਾਓਗੇ, ਫਿਰ ਉੱਥੇ ਸਕੂਲ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਵੀ ਫਿਰ ਤਰੱਕੀ ਪਾਉਣਗੇ.
Hanji. But we have to be careful when we're again, I go back to the things that I remember and how smart my students are, that if we start to look at pictures and make our own stories, ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ actual school ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਕਿਤਾਬ ਉੱਥੇ teacher ਪੜ੍ਹ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, then they'll start to say, but that's not what my dad has said, that's not what my mama said, right? So that's where the fun happens, right? So that's where the teachers pick up the phone and say, what are you reading to your child? How are you reading this book to your child? And what happens is that then that teacher will put on an extra funny hat and read that story the way that child was presented, right? Just to get him to feel that vibe at school as well, that, wow, my teacher knows that story too, right?
Absolutely. So yeah. And I'm keeping an eye on our time. Maybe we'll wrap up in a couple of minutes, but one really important question, ਇੱਕ ਸਵਾਲ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੇ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਉਹ ਘਰੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਸਿਰਫ ਬੋਲਦੇ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਸਿਰਫ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਆਉਂਦੀ, ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਘੱਟ ਆਉਂਦੀ, ਪਰ ਉਹ ਲੈਟਸ ਸੇ ਹੁਣ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਸਕੂਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਣਗੇ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ, ਉਹਦੇ ਲਈ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਐਡਵਾਈਸ ਦੇ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ?
ਤਾਂ ਫਿਕਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਨੀ, ਲਾਈਕ ਬੱਚੇ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਡਿਵੈਲਪਮੈਂਟ ਹੈਗੀ ਉਹ ਜਲਦੀ ਤੋਂ ਜਲਦੀ ਪਿਕ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ, ਰਾਈਟ? ਸੋ ਉਹ observe ਕਰਨਗੇ ਕਿ once there's a routine happening at school, whether it's the calendar, the circle time, the songs, so repetition of things that a teacher is doing in class, ਉਹ ਜਲਦੀ ਤੋਂ ਜਲਦੀ ਪਿਕ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ. For example, songs, that's the biggest way for children to learn English is through songs and singing, right? So I know I had a few Punjabi students that came from India. ਉਹ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮੈਮ ਬੋਲਦੇ ਸੀ, they would not call me Ms Rosey, ਤੇ ਮੈਮ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸਮਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਉਂਦੀ, ਮੈਮ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਉਂਦਾ. And if you answer that in English, it's okay, right? They'll start to say and understand that it's okay means this, right? So songs, colors, teaching your child different colors at home prior to going to school. Chote fruit de na daso in English, right? So that your child can look at a specific fruit and say, ki, mama, apple, right? Or you're going to say to your child, apple, right? So books that have very, very small words that they can start to learn. But I don't think you should have that much stress over your child not speaking English. Like, the anxiety, the load nahi hai, because once your child starts to go to school, एकदम ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇੰਨਾ surprise ਹੋਵੇਗਾ कि मेरा child like is picking up English already, right? So, but to parents who are watching, as an educator, don't be afraid of making that decision कि मेरे बच्चे ਨੂੰ अंग्रेजी नहीं आंदी, okay, 1 साल बाद ਅਸੀਂ ਭੇਜਾਂਗੇ, 2 ਸਾਲ ਬਾਅਦ ਭੇਜਾਂਗੇ. The time runs, right? Like, we have to make sure your child development, it happens at that age. It's okay, right? So you'll be surprised कि ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਬੱਚਾ in a week or two will come back and you'll say कि Punjabi क्यों नहीं बोल रहा, right? Because picking up the English is so quick in that child's brain, right? So
yeah, बहुत जल्दी pick up करते हैं. So स्कूल जाके जिਵੇਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ, ਤੇ I think the other thing I think about is also ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਿਖਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੰਗਣ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਉੱਥੇ ਪਊ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਪਾਣੀ ਬਾਰੇ ਦੱਸ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਬਾਥਰੂਮ ਬਾਰੇ ਦੱਸ ਸਕਦੇ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ can I have some water, can I go to the bathroom, even that's a good place to start. ਬਸ ਇੰਨੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਫਿਰ ਉਹ at least ਪਹਿਲੇ ਦਿਨ ਉੱਥੇ comfortable feel ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ. It's almost ਮੈਨੂੰ ਯਾਦ ਆ ਰਿਹਾ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿਤੇ travel ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ sometimes you have to learn the language, like just basic tourist language, in the same sort of way. ਸਿਰਫ ਜਿਹੜੇ simple language ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਦਿਨ ਜਦੋਂ ਉੱਥੇ ਜਾਣਗੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਇੰਟਰੋਡਿਊਸ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਨਾਮ, ਬਾਥਰੂਮ ਜਾਣ ਦਾ ਜੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਲੋੜ ਹੈਗੀ ਜਾਂ ਖਾਣ ਪੀਣ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ at least they'll feel comfortable. But
I think what you said was the most important sentences. Yes, I'm not feeling well, right? Or, I miss my mama or dada, or I need water, or I need to go to the washroom, right? So those kind of sentences you need to, yes, build with your child prior to going, so they understand that sentence structure from previous of learning at home, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think the other thing, we had a really nice conversation about a couple of months ago with we were talking about speech and language therapy. ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ bilingualism ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਬੱਚਾ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਸਕੂਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਮਤਲਬ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਬੋਲਣੀ ਬੰਦ ਕਰ ਦੇਣੀ ਆ. ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਦਿਮਾਗ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਅੱਛਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਜੇ ਐਟਲੀਸਟ 2 ਲੈਂਗੁਏਜਸ ਸਿੱਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ. ਸੋ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਨੂੰ ਈਜ਼ੀ ਲੱਗਦਾ, ਜੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਸੌਖੀ ਲੱਗਦੀ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਸੌਖੀ ਲੱਗਦੀ ਆ, continue with that and try to keep some routines with both if possible. But ਇਹਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ we're going to English school so we're only speaking English. If you speak comfortably in Punjabi at home, you should continue with that. ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਦਿਮਾਗ ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ stimulation ਮਿਲਦੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਅੱਗੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਵੀ ਦਿਮਾਗ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਲਈ ਅੱਛਾ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ.
Like growing up, so at home, my dad and my mom Punjabi, at school to English sikhoge, right? So then sanu maan hai ki we're able to speak Punjabi, fluently, right? So we're able to speak English and have the Punjabi dialects with the children when they come to school as well, right? So it's very important to have that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for parents that are feeling nervous about that first day, if it's coming up, hopefully this was reassuring, hearing all of this wonderful advice from Ms Rosey herself, and with all of your experience as well. So maybe we'll wrap up there. Were there any final words or anything else that you had wanted to say before we wrap up?
Well, I just wanted to thank you for having me today, and I think it's such an important topic to talk to parents because it's a lot for parents to take in, right? Like, bacha's going to school, how are they going to be? I'm going back to school, to work, and the anxiety is going to be there. But to the parents listening, it's okay. Be strong, be calm. Take a few minutes before you actually drive to take your child to school and self-reflect, and just tell yourself that your kids are going to be taken care of. We've got amazing educators that are there to take care of your child. So I just breathe and stay calm, because this journey of education is so beautiful, and I'm sure that your child will grow every day that he attends school. So
absolutely, yeah, I think you've said it so many times tonight, but just making it a positive experience. And I know we often will, in our household, will think about how do we celebrate the end of that first day as well as a bit of a milestone. So ਪਹਿਲਾ ਦਿਨ kindergarten ਦਾ ਜੇ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਜਾਂ ਡੇ ਕੇਅਰ ਦਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ, ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਚਲੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਬਹਿ ਕੇ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਕੀ ਹੋਇਆ ਜੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਦਾ ਜੀ ਕਰਦਾ, ਪਰ ਨਾਲੇ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਉਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਮਨਾਈਏ as well. So maybe it means going on a bit of a picnic after school or having something yummy to eat. But just spending that time together ਕਿ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਬੱਚੇ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਫਿਰ ਹੌਸਲਾ ਵੱਧਦਾ the confidence ਵੱਧਦਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ. So I think just keeping it positive is such an important thing. But really, to all of the parents that were watching or are watching this recording afterwards as well, good luck with this next chapter as kids go back to school. And yeah, we're all the best to everybody. And thank you so much, Rosie, for being a part of our conversation tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone. We'll sign off.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.